Ladies and gentlemen, may we introduce PJ Bloom to be interviewed by Canada AM's Richard Krause.
Nice to see you, Richard. That was by far the best introduction I think I've ever had.
Well, as introductions goes, Johnny Carson used to say that was my most recent one. Welcome, you just off a plane, just got here, and it was interesting. We were backstage, and I was saying, I hate red eyes. Why would you take the red eye in here? And you said, I don't like to waste a day. And that's how busy you are these days, right?
It's true. I don't like to waste a day in the air traveling. I like to kind of, if I'm going to go do these types of things, I like to get on the ground and get in it, like I definitely was yesterday. I think I rolled in about 5 a.m., so I apologize in advance if I sound like I rolled in about 5 a.m. say anything controversial.
If there's any synapses, lapses, we'll pick it up. So you grew up in Los Angeles. You were born and raised. Your dad is an Emmy-winning screenwriter. From the time you were a little kid, you were going to film sets and studios and that kind of thing. Did that, growing up in that milieu and growing up like that, did that push you towards what you're doing right now, or was it just strictly a love of music that guided you all the way through?
I think it was both. I think that just sort of growing up in that arts environment probably pushed me towards doing this thing or whatever I do. I mean, I think that doing something in the real world and having a real job was probably never part of my destiny. I'm guessing that everyone in this room probably wouldn't function so well out there in the real world. I think we have to all be somewhat odd to be in the arts business in some way. But yeah, I mean, it was a very normal lifestyle for me to have sort of interesting artistic people around all the time and be involved. I just again, I never could see myself sitting in a cube pushing a pencil somewhere. I don't know that would work for me.
Well, and I guess growing up that way makes it seem possible to have this job, because the job is, I mean, it's, you've obviously been very successful. I mean, your career soundtrack sales tally more than 42 million singles, 13 million albums. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's a lot of stuff. So it's a very real job, but it's kind of an ephemeral thing that you do. It's kind of it's hard to put your finger exactly on what it is, I think. And maybe growing up around arts-minded people made you realize, oh, this is possible. I can make a living doing this.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I never knew that being involved in the soundtrack business per se was even a job. And the thing that I do as a music supervisor, or even just the trade of being a music supervisor, is something that only in the last decade has actually become something that even other people know about. I mean, for the first 10 years of my career, I couldn't really even describe what I did. People would ask me what I do. I wasn't exactly sure what it was. It was difficult to kind of even verbalize the gig, and picking songs for televisions or television or a film or whatever it is somewhat of it. It's part of it. It's certainly not the whole, but just saying that to people was kind of an odd job. And when I discovered it, it was something. For me, it was I was kind of blown away at the notion that this was actually something that you could get paid to do. So yeah. For me, it was fun to.
It's like when you're a kid and you make mixtapes. You're like, I could get paid for this.
Absolutely.
Now, you say there's more to it than just picking songs. So let's start and give everyone just an idea as to what it is on a day-to-day basis that you do.
Yeah, I mean the creative component is certainly the sexy part of it, and that exists. What music supervision is really a service-based occupation. So I'm hired to serve the needs of the producers and directors, studios and networks that I work with. So from a creative perspective, helping fulfill the song needs of these productions is part of it. But it's really the management of the money and the legal aspects and the administration and the paperwork and the technical aspects of production, especially with a show like Glee, which is, there's so much on-set work that has to be done. So, finding the songs, picking the songs is one component, but I should probably turn this off, I think, is one component, but it's really all that day-to-day management, interacting with record labels, interacting with publishers, attorneys, managers, getting to work with bands. There's a lot of kind of boring administrative and technical stuff that goes along with it.
And how much music are you listening? How much new music are you listening to? Because I've read in one interview that you had said, getting Coldplay or getting U2 or something like that, that's okay. I like finding unknown bands. I like finding, different unheard music to use in my soundtracks. But to do that, you have to listen. You have to listen to everything, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to listen to everything. It's, in the infinitum of music, it's just, there's no way I could possibly listen to everything. So but just like all of us in this room, the notion of discovery is something that's incredibly important to me. So, I want to be able to find something that just completely knocks my socks off. So, I'm in the spirit of achieving that. I'm constantly listening to music, and then just for the day-to-day nature of the job that I have to do, I have to listen to all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Coldplay fan. I'm a huge Radiohead fan, but people know those bands, and it's not to me it's not as exciting, I think, necessarily. Trying to put a Coldplay song on an episode of television or in a film. For me, it's much more exciting and much more gratifying to kind of find an artist or that no one knows, and help expose that artist, get them paid, and contribute to their potential success. Hopefully.
Yeah, or start a career.
Yeah, start a career.
So, Glee, I would imagine, is a slightly different setup because the songs are so integral to the plots of each of the shows, and they have to move like a musical. Like if this was Showboat or Cabaret or something, the songs have to move the plot along. Whereas in a film or a lot of television shows, you're choosing more, I think, for atmosphere and for the feel of the song. So, what are the differences between working on a show like Glee and then working on something like CSI, where you're supplying background music that isn't necessarily moving the plot forward? Or maybe it is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the primary difference is how the process is engaged. For 90% of the shows that I work on, the music is kind of an afterthought. It's something that's handled in post-production after the film or episode of television is shot. We're putting the whole thing together, and it's we're sitting in the cutting room and we're working with songs and trying to figure out how the breakup montage, find that perfectly sad song that works for the perfect breakup montage. Would actually come together, but Glee is a very front-loaded show. So we do much of the work before we ever shoot a frame. Ryan Murphy, who created the show, he wanted to create a song environment where the songs were integral to the storytelling process. Either the lyrics drive the story, or the dialogue sets up the song. So in order to do that, we have to front load everything. So we're finding the music, we're dealing with the legal and administrative aspects of clearing those songs. Then we go into rehearsals with the cast and lighting and staging. I mean, in essence, we're doing a 5 to 8 music videos each week. So the setup for that is a lot, and it's very, very comprehensive. And there's a huge team that I work with that actually handles all of the music needs of that show, and it's a big production. But that is very unique to the job of music supervision. It's a very unique animal. For the most part, we're looking at it after the show is shot, as we're assembling it in the cutting room. But Glee is a unique animal in that way.
It is, and it's been on for 5 years. It's going into a 6th season, and the interesting thing about this is that musicals on television before Glee have often not done particularly well. Post Glee, Smash, I guess, with same kind of show featured. Nashville does well, I guess, but music shows haven't always done extremely well. So in the first season of Glee, was it difficult to get artists enthusiastic about offering up the rights to their songs?
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult. I mean, every time a television musical, an episodic musical, had ever been attempted, it had failed miserably. I mean, to say they hadn't done well would be putting it lightly. I mean, they have literally...
I'm Canadian and very polite.
Right. I mean, they have literally fallen flat on their face. So trying to explain to artists and songwriters who are incredibly precious about their music that we're going to attempt to do this, and even sort of describing what Glee Club is was difficult. And then secondly, we're not actually using the original recordings. We're making our own. So in essence, we're doing very very sort of high value karaoke. So trying to get people to part with their music in that way was very very difficult. So the conversations, it took a lot of convincing on my part. But I worked with a lot of the major publishers and minor publishers too, who control a lot of this music, to sort of explain to them so they could explain to their artists and songwriters on my behalf what it was. But getting people convinced in that first year before the show had actually aired, before the show had found any success, was a difficult process.
Were there any really tough sells that eventually went on to be kind of landmark moments in the show that you were able to go, see, I told you this was going to work?
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't think of anything specific per se, or any specific mode. There were definitely people that artists that denied us their music in the
Bryan Adams was one of them. Right?
Yeah, Bryan Adams was one. It's we wanted to use what was that song from the Robin Hood movie that
Everything I Do.
Everything I Do. So that was one of the songs that we wanted to do in the first season of Glee, and he just didn't want to be involved. And to his credit, there was no reason, there was no historical reason for him to want to be involved. And I think the song, it was a very popular song that had a moment in time, and to potentially be involved in a show like Glee without any existing success at that moment could have marred the reputation of that song. So and that happened a lot. There were a lot of big artists, a lot of major sort of song moments that we had written into the script and conceptualized about where people didn't want to be involved. Now, after the show became a worldwide phenomenon, it was the conversations were easier, I think, and people definitely want to be involved. And the other sort of unique and interesting thing about Glee is there's this massive retail component. I mean, we sold and do sell still a lot of units of music, which is completely unique to television.
Were you surprised by the success, the spin-off, the ancillary success of all that? And in particular, I was thinking there was the Glee Christmas album. You couldn't go anywhere without tripping over a copy of the Glee Christmas album. Were you surprised at the success? Because it's got a built-in promotional component in the television show, but it doesn't necessarily translate always that people are going to run out and buy the records. But in this case, they did.
Yeah, I don't think that any of us could have predicted the success of this show. When we were making the pilot, we were making the initial episode of this show. I think we all knew that we were onto something special. It was one of those moments where hearing Leah Michele sing, or seeing the 6 to 8 months of prep work kind of come alive on the screen during this initial week that we were shooting. I think that we all felt something special was happening, and honestly, even if the show was a total failure and never went on to have the success that it had, I think everybody who was involved in the making of that pilot at that time felt that, and so I think we all knew that something was going to happen, although none of us could really predict what it was going to be. I think the one of the sort of milestone moments for me was when we did the Glee tour. We did about we did 10 or 20 shows across North America, and then subsequently did a tour in Europe, and for me, I thought it was just the dumbest idea I'd ever heard.
It was because it was a big style concert tour. There was dancing. There was it was a big show.
To be frank, they're actors. Yeah. I mean, they're not they weren't necessarily traditional artists and singers. And there's a lot of production work that goes into what you end up seeing on screen, and to me, the idea of it translating to a live event in that way, I just thought for sure that it was going to be a franchise killer. Like, there's no way this will work live, because it
became a movie as well.
Became a movie as well, but so I went to, I didn't want to go to the live show. I just didn't want to see it. To me, I was just certain it was going to be an absolute train wreck. And then the head of television for 20th Century, or television music for 20th Century Fox, Jeff Bywater, who's been a great partner for me in this project, called me up the day of the show, and he said, "Look, come to the show. I'm going to put a ticket for you at will call. Just come and see it. You need to come and see it. And I went, and it completely blew my mind. It was the whole, this is, a 6,000 seat amphitheater was totally sold out. There were girls screaming like it was the Beatles, like that high pitched scream, when young girls get really excited about seeing a boy band or something like that.
It's a sound that only 14 to 16-year-old girls can make.
Correct, absolutely. And they were all buying the merchandise, $20 T-shirts, and they were buying like 3 of them at a time. And it was just, there was so much excitement and so much energy in this amphitheater at the time. It was, to me, I think that's when it kind of hit me, like, my gosh, this is a real phenomenon, and people are really, really into it, and they really care. And people are still rabid fans of the show after all this time.
I'm going to turn things over to you. So I imagine the audience here is made up of musicians who want to sell songs and people who are interested in becoming music supervisors. I just have 2 quick questions. So Bryan Adams turns down and says, okay, we're not going to let you use that song. Was the song so specific that maybe the story had to be changed to adapt to not having that song, or were you able just to substitute with another love song?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's definitely, we have to course correct when these type of things happen. When Ryan comes up with a song idea, it's pretty specific, so it's not easily changed. These songs, especially the huge iconic hits like that song, have this indelible place in pop culture history. So you can't just interchange all of these incredibly iconic songs that easily. So sometimes making changes and course correcting is easier than others. Sometimes it's an absolute disaster, especially when we've already spent time and money gearing up the production to work for this particular tune, and then for whatever reason, at some late-breaking moment, we can't have it. So, but it happens, and we press on.
Corey Monteith passed away. How has that affected the show? How has that affected? The question is, I mean, you must have worked with him relatively closely. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was awful. I mean, it was. Corey was the heart and soul of the show in a lot of ways, and I think there was a moment in time where all of us were kind of wondering whether it was even the right thing to do to continue creating the show and continue working, or whether just stopping at that moment was the right thing to do, or more respectful to his legacy and his memory. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to put into words. I think we had for the cast and crew of the show, we had a private memorial, and all the cast sang Corey's favorite songs and talked about their favorite Corey moments, and there was a video montage and a photo montage, and I think that was a rather cathartic experience for the cast and the crew as a family, and after that, I think we were able to kind of move on, and there are things that exist within the show now that we do to honor his memory. Like Corey was a big classic rock fan, so a lot of the classic rock songs that we do on the show, I think kind of live in his the memory of his role. But yeah, I mean I think anybody that you're that close with passing away is a difficult time, but.
And he was a lovely guy. I knew him a little bit. He was a lovely guy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I will turn over to the audience. Do we have questions from you for PJ Bloom? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to know what an average day in the life of being a supervisor would be like.
The question was, so everyone can hear, what's the average day in a life when you're not on a red eye in a music supervisor's life like?
It's there's definitely the creative part, and there's the listening to music part, and interacting with artists, which I think is again the more sexy part of it. But a lot of it is spent dealing with the sort of the clearance aspect of it, and negotiating these songs. Dealing with these major labels, major publishers is oftentimes a trying experience. To say the least.
In what way? I mean, are you negotiating and saying, okay, we'll give you, an extra credit at the end of the show if we don't charge us as much for the song, or
it's money. I mean, it's basically money. In the music business in 2014, it's how money is generated is different than it was 10 or 15 years ago. With retail sales being down, the industry of sync is kind of this coveted income stream, because there's money that exists. There's also exposure that exists. But I find that the major labels in the music industry in general is trying to figure out how to make up for all of this lost revenue that used to exist in the retail format, 10 or 15 years ago. So every penny is so precious, especially for these major corporations who need that money to survive and sustain these big machines that they have. So it's oftentimes just, my day is spent just negotiating with these people and trying to figure out like where we can meet on the money part of it,
what sort of range are we talking about in terms of a song that might be placed on Glee? Let's use that as an example. What sort of range in money are we talking about?
Well, Glee is kind of a different animal because our bread and butter is using shadowing existing success. So for the most part, a song has to already be iconic, has to already be huge, whether it's the brand new Beyonce single that's on the charts now, or a classic that we all know from the last 30 or 40 years. So those songs always come at a premium. You have to pay a lot of money, and we do for those tunes. But for newer artists, emerging acts, unknown artists, really true independent people, maybe there's a couple $1,000 at the end of the rainbow. Maybe there's a few hundred. It's tough to say. I mean,
that's one of the questions that came up when I was talking to people about doing this interview. I mean, should bands expect to get rich from sync rights?
I don't know about rich. I think it's one component in sustaining a successful career as a creative person. I think focusing entirely on sync and making that your entire career path, I think is difficult. I don't think it's a substitute for touring. I don't think it's a substitute for selling merchandise or having success at retail. I think it's one income stream and one component. So, to me, having a successful career is really being able to work all those income streams at the same time. For sync, I think the real way to have success is in quantity. I would rather, if I were an artist and I was writing a song and or trying to sell my wares at sync, I would focus on doing as many quality deals as possible in the hopes of really making that a significant income stream versus trying to find that one huge sync that's gonna pay you. Those are few and far between, but there's plenty of places to put your music, regionally, locally. Ultimately that'll help you, generate money, and it just doesn't. You can make less money, but if you do it more often, I think you're gonna make more in the end.
Yeah, if you make $50 1,000 times,
yeah.
It's $50,000.
Right.
You also choose music for commercials and advertisements, and it was interesting. Before we came out, we were talking. We're both huge David Bowie fans. His music's popping up a great deal. Yeah. And is it because of the connection to classic rock? Is it because it's David Bowie and he's a prestige artist? What makes advertisers focus in? Because it does seem to me that you go through these roles where Bob Dylan's everywhere now on advertisements, David Bowie now. What is it?
Yeah, I think it's it's all cyclical. I can remember when. Like Nick Drake, Pink Moon was in the Volkswagen ads, and then all of a sudden everybody was using Nick Drake, and everybody was sort of focusing on the singer-songwriter aspect of music, and then Skrillex with dubstep, and then all of a sudden you couldn't see an advert on television that didn't have a dubstep song, So I think those are these cycle moments, and if there's one great advert that has a David Bowie song, then all of a sudden everybody will want want to use David Bowie. But I think, it has to, the image and the music has to work and has to be successful. Music can't be the only driver. Just because David Bowie is an iconic artist, he has all these amazing songs, if you use him in an advert, it doesn't mean it's going to be successful. The ad or the television show or the movie still has to be great. It still has to be well made. So the music component, the song component accentuates all that. It can't be the only driver. There has to be, this full creative thought for it to work and people to get excited about it.
It's interesting. There's a new ad with Nick Waterhouse on television that actually shows him playing. It's part of the narrative is showing him on stage, which I thought was really interesting because he's an artist that I don't think a lot of people know at this point, but I think these ads he's great, and I think these ads may well help break him.
Yeah, and I mean, and these are coveted moments, when you can, as an artist, if you can have some sort of integration into the advert, like a Nick Waterhouse or any of these sort of mobile companies, or showing the song or the artist or the brand name on the screen as they're trying to sell their product is huge. I mean, it's the whatever licensing money that you would make, really pales in comparison to the broad amount of exposure that you can get. Nick Waterhouse is, he's an artist that's been around for quite some time, and he's only sort of just coming, to light for the general public now, and
it's advertising.
Yeah, and it's through advertising, absolutely.
Do we have other questions from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
As a music supervisor for Glee, how did you deal with the backlash for the copyright issue with Baby Got Back, and how did it affect your department and you as an individual?
Which part? There wasn't really any backlash per se. I mean, except that another artist who covered the song got angry about it, but from a legal standpoint,
So this just so everybody understands. My understanding of it is that the Baby Got Back was featured on Glee in a kind of specific sort of arrangement that another artist came out and said, "Hey, I'm not getting paid for that, and that's my arrangement." Is that essentially what happened?
Yeah, that's essentially what happened, and I mean, it's. With Glee, we the show honors pop culture. So, there's, I mean, it's a tough question. It's a tough question to answer. I mean, he covered a song, and then we covered his cover of a song. So, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing illegal about it, and I think that we've done that with other artists before, and artists love it because it gives exposure to their arrangement and their version of somebody else's song. I think in this particular case, he used it as a promotional vehicle to sell his own music, and it worked. So, I mean, I can understand the frustration, but at the same time, he took this moment and he exploited it for his own purpose. So I think it all worked out for him in the end. He sold more records.
And you asked about backlash, and there hasn't been one. Other artists haven't come to you and said, "Oh no, I'm not giving you the rights to my songs because of that," or anything.
No, absolutely not. I mean, we have an incredibly positive and symbiotic relationship with the music industry. It's I don't think that anybody feels that Glee is some evil machine, doing bad things to people's songs. And if they do, they don't have to be involved, but for the most part, I think it has a positive, place in culture and history. Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
When it comes to doing syncs for you, do you rely mostly on pitches and submissions, or do you do A&R and find songs yourself?
I mean both. I mean, everybody has to get turned on to something by someone else. There's not a lot of just sort of randomly walking into a club or randomly going into a record store or going on iTunes and find something. I mean, I depend a lot on people that I know who have excellent music taste, around the world who are tapped into areas of music, people that I trust who turn me on to stuff constantly. It's impossible to find everything on your own, so I have to rely on people to pitch me music constantly, and because I sit in this position, I'm a buyer in a world of sellers. It's a wonderful place to be, because I really can just the music just comes to me, and then I can just kind of sift through it. I mean, ultimately, I still have to use my ears, and I still have to love something, and it still has to move me. I still have to be touched by it. But I rely constantly on people out there in the world who know more about it than I do to turn me on to it. I mean, it's I have to work that way. And I mean, it would be great if I could just sit and listen to music all day. That would be an amazing job. Unfortunately, there's I can't do that, because there is really this technical and administrative and political aspect of what I do that has to be the job that has to be tended to. So pitching is critical to my process, for sure.
And can you have things that we'll get to your question in just a sec. Do you have things that someone might pitch you in January, and then a year and a half later you go, oh, that thing, remember the song? And how do you find something that's been around maybe in your consciousness for a while, but if you're pitched so much stuff, you might not remember a title or a name or...
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I can do. I mean, I can't really remember like what I had for lunch yesterday, but music, I just I can recall fairly well, and if I find something that I like, that I don't necessarily have a place for at that moment, it kind of goes in the mental file cabinet, and I try to recall it down the road. At the same time, it's good to have those moments right in front of you, because it's tough to remember everything at that moment. But I mean, with music, it is kind of one of those things that I do pretty well at recalling stuff that I've heard, especially stuff that I like and get excited about.
Is it annoying for you if people were to re-pitch the same thing that they pitched like a year ago, but they've heard you're working on something that might be appropriate, and they think, well, maybe he's just forgotten that we did this pitch?
I don't know if annoying is the right word. I mean, my job is awesome, and I think everybody in this room has an awesome job. It's like we get to work in art and music, and hopefully don't have to go and break rocks for a living or make widgets on an assembly line. It's like we all do this incredible thing, and I want people to be successful. So I don't have any issues if people pitch me or re-pitch me or are trying to sell me the same song 5 times in 5 days in a row. I may not necessarily respond to you just because I don't have the luxury of having that kind of time to be able to talk to everyone all the time about it. But I would never be annoyed necessarily if somebody kept pitching me the same music in the same time constantly. I mean, that's what it is, man. We're all trying to survive. So I would never fault somebody for being out there trying to sell their wares.
Go ahead, right in the back here.
Just wondering about when you're looking for independent artists and things like that, like where do you think you would find the most of them? Would it be like kind of like tours, like little bar shows, or more like social media kind of things like Facebook and
Yeah, how important is social media to you?
To me, it's not. I mean, I'm not on Facebook, and have been tweeting a little bit lately. I've been kind of getting into that. But when I would say, 10 years ago when I was younger and had more time and less responsibilities, I was at shows all the time. I was out 6 nights a week, seeing 5, 6, 7 bands a night, going to 3, 4, 5 different clubs. And to me, that was my favorite filter, because I want to experience something live, and if I hear a band on a record and then ultimately go and have an incredible live experience, to me that means a lot. But today, it's really about these pitches. It's people sending me music. A lot of it comes straight into my inbox, email. And I want to hear a little bit of the backstory. I mean, I don't necessarily troll Facebook or read a lot of these blogs. Not because I don't trust them as a source. I just I just sort of assimilate my music in different ways, but I think all of these are, and that's just me personally. I mean, every one of us who does this thing does it differently, and they experience music and they absorb music differently. I mean, a lot of people spend a lot of time, reading blogs or going to Facebook or trolling these areas, and I think it's a hugely important component in exposure, and it's a lot of how. It's a lot of how, especially in the millennial generation, how people are getting their music and finding their stuff and getting their information. I just don't necessarily operate in that way, but I'm old, so it's just not my bag.
If you're old, I'm Methuselah. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I was wondering how can a music supervisor expect to be compensated? Is it completely separate from the music budget that you have for a project, or if you negotiate good deals for your project, do you also get compensated for that?
No, well, I get paid by the studio or the network, the production company, and it's not part of the music budget itself. So if I if I'm given $5,000 to spend on a song and I negotiate a deal for less than $5,000, I don't get to keep the extra dough. It's completely separate, and ideally, whatever my music budget is, whatever is dictated to me by a studio or by a network, you want to spend it all. It's like it's not my money, and I want to spread it out. Among artists and songwriters, I want people to have it, because if you don't spend it, then they take it away from you.
You won't get the same next year.
They'll just say, oh, well, you need to spend the money, so we'll just lower your budget. So you want to try to you don't want to go over, but you want to try to spend it all. But how I get paid is a completely separate deal. And in television, I'm paid on an episodic basis. On a film, you kind of get a lump sum, and an advert, sort of different stages, but it's not connected to the money that I use, or we as music supervisors use to license music from artists and songwriters and labels and publishers. It's completely separate in that way.
We just have time for a couple of more questions. Do we have some from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. What kind of information do you like to see in a pitch? What's most likely to make you open up an email or listen to a song?
What do you put in the subject line to make you click on it?
Yeah, that is a tough question to answer. It's there's not a lot of uniqueness anymore for me in the way people pitch me or try to sell songs. There's people for the most part use the same kind of trigger words and similar words, and everybody says that their music is very syncable, or it's very cinematic. I'm not exactly sure what that even means, but people say that all the time.
I can hear Leah Michelle's voice singing this song.
Yeah, I think that it's really more about who's pitching me more than what the subject line would say or what the body of the email would say. I think it's difficult for independent artists or songwriters or labels or publishers to develop relationships with music supervisors and find success in that way. One of the ways that I find music are through these sync agencies. Familiar with these companies? These companies they're sync aggregators that work with labels and publishers. And I like these companies because for me it's all about time management. There's a lot going on every day, and if I need a song for a particular song spot, it's in the spirit of time management. It's difficult for me to have a single conversation with a single artist in the hopes that the 12 songs on this independent artist's one album, like one of those 12 songs fits my need. The better move for me is to call one of these sync aggregators and say, look, I'm looking for this song, and then they'll look at their 500 bands, and their 50,000 songs, and kind of, mine their catalog on my behalf, and then come back with stuff that's more targeted. So I think having relationships as an independent artist, like having relationships with these sync agencies, is a positive thing, because they have those relationships with music supervisors. We are the ones that, they're the ones that we call. They speak our language. I feel more confident from a legal aspect that we'll be able to make that deal, and it'll be a right deal. Nothing will go wrong. And it's those are the ones that I spend more time. Those are the emails that I spend more time opening. Those are the emails that I spend more time looking about and thinking about. It's it's not that I don't want to meet artists and have that discovery or be able to take that A&R credit for breaking somebody in that way, or that I don't believe that I'm going to be completely knocked out and blown away by something that an individual has created. I just don't have the time to spend doing it that way. So I believe that really one of the best things to do is to kind of have relationships with people who already have those relationships with music supervisors.
I know I get pitched a lot of things as story ideas, and I always find that less is more, simpler is better, and the more elaborate a pitch, the worse the idea usually is.
Yeah.
That's what I find. So if you are pitching, keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it short, keep it sweet. I think a lot of us are kind of, we're subject line people these days, and it's when you're reading emails, you kind of want to. There was this, there was this sort of urban legend, like in the 70s and 80s, that you were supposed to put your best song third on the record, which to me just sounds like the dumbest idea, man. It's like you want to put the best song first. You want it, whatever the trigger words or the thing that you're going to say about music or the story that you tell or whatever you want to do to get somebody's attention, do it immediately, and get it out there up front. But short and sweet, I think is good advice.
Put it up front. We just have 35 seconds left. So, PJ, I'll just take this opportunity to thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Richard.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you all for getting up early on a Saturday. You were probably all out Friday night somewhere watching bands. So thank you all for getting up early and coming out. We appreciate your time. And PJ, thanks so much.
Thank you.